Hello, Americans, and names A through Z of the human species body of individual bodies. A human human nature breaching method measured and maintained, and now it measures and maintains. Self-out collusions with it haven't been measured and maintained by a breaching method. The only people that could operate the phenomenon of the names of countries as locations, areas, and states, no, not the personal names. Forcing blame on other things, others, ourselves, until it was things are true. Used to leave out the breaching method's roles with it, like the individuals' names, as individuals, as leaders, as individual crime groups. When did they stop being used by the breaching method that only allowed self-cultivated collusion / S with its only permitted propagated? Why and how there's a witch trials place next to Webb House, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum, for example, and other communicated about that place and at founding locations A through Z. Everyone left entrenched at countries A through Z. Other things, others, ourselves blamed for why and how our founders told us to demonstrate. The books there, the syntax. They didn't have free speech. Our founders, plural, directed us to understand why and how, not to entertain anyone pretended as a known founder besides James Madison. And they directed us how and why to describe the plural founders as the ones that had to counter-extort everyone else. They explained to us why and how they had to leave even roles against all women, against all native, against all humanity, against against black pupils, white survivors. Northern colonies and southern colonies were only permitted roles with slavery. And then America's founders were born. This breach, and it wasn't just England. And England was already possessed there and here, factually, nature-wise, not therefore physically. And then once this breaching method had countries individually grouped in together, it could easier has any group country's voice. It could torture, extort, and factually nature enslave, therefore physically enslave any grouping of countries, as long as other things, others, ourselves are kept blamed for where our founders and where nature itself shows us to blame a human factually nature breaching method, that which all those affronts on women, on native, on black people's white survivors are about all kinds of subjects, but at the same time, they're all about the breaching method, the one that was entrenched before our founders were born and through the foundation of America's founding. This is pounding drums. This is what I believe this is what Vladimir Putin from Russia was trying to communicate with Tucker Carlson about regarding how there was something entrenched in our countries. This is why and how from America to Russia to Ukraine, the suburbs are manifest almost exactly the same. And there was slavery enforced, a torture, extortion, slavery method. Anyone speaking about any of those things, even speaking up to defend women outside the internationally monitored conversations, outside the sense and sensibilities of overt criminal enterprises, private one, public ones, then they're going to speak about crimes. Think about what the prisons had collusion with, /S, too. Increasingly, Sandy Hook prisons have collusions with crime scenes with their patients and criminals, and to force them, because they have roles with the crime scenes, including a body dumping spot and a serial killer who's involved with people from other countries, too, with a prison in Sandy Hook and other campuses there, and collusions with all sides of criminal and civil cases and interbranch names and the name of and values of the court. For example, the branch of government itself used remotely to people pretending it's debatable relative to what I caught them doing. and how you guys won't allow people free speech and how it's gotten away with. Because they're putting fake things in databases and they're being used to sense by the breaching method, collusion /S self-valued, right, where no one self-values it. See them speaking about sexual rights of people and with doctors all this time and the counters to it. And no one even allows it. They're pretending it's theory. Nature's identity itself is showing us it's generating male, female with other species' bodies. It's generating two eyes. It's generating hunger and thirst. It's generating obligations for the syntax and the syntax nature of people at campuses A through Z that they are incapable of affording discerned more and more from off those campuses and relative to how they were child abused at campuses like this, replacing with our founders, replacing with James Madison, declassified about why and how they did not have free speech and everyone had to pretend free speech to an extent /S, otherwise they were sensed. Their nature was sensed. This breaching method did things to make sure there were self-valued collusions with its use /S of criminal insidiousness natures of positive things and negative things appreciated syntactically. And just postures of, when did science speak? When were readings of statutes and precedents saying or not criminally, but only three branches of government? But they either make a mistake or not. Of course they made a mistake. They have collusion /S covering up too. But all that, because the breaching method used those mistakes, they used them since they were kids. This breaching method has projected confessions to itself that it also employed to be to ourselves. Where and how leaking and spying is in the syntax of our leaders, preventing us since founding the free speech to speak for nature when it communicates with us. Let alone now when we speak about nature, now we're gonna bring into this how James Madison communicated for us and why with the plural founders communicated for us to understand why and how they had to force everyone to help them. And they had to hide the names of our plural founders because no one was free. None of those free. All the databases and the location /S associated with them other people with glorified speech and arts, tactical terror, in other words, all victims /hyper victims, but also in parties and with roles with different /S. Leaving out exceptions, exception nature, only capable of valuing it being and having been fake through in the past actively and with all natures of speculation only capable of being per where and how all these countries in the news, overt criminal enterprises in the news, transnational groups in the news, as described. They are further involved, even that is made up, they're involved with worse, recorded time collusion /S through roles with different /S. Racketeering worse than war crimes, so to speak. All names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, the interbranch, the foreign and domestic, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists, even when they're not in the case, originally and still, rely upon the same self-valued sequenceships. The same self-valued principle treatments reliant upon and as criminally foreign influence tactically delusions wrought, per worse readings of American history principles. Oh, just because it's published or not. James Madison detailed this. Why and how they wanted nothing to do with things all against all women, against Native Americans, against even slavery rules only permitted northern colonies and southern colonies more than 13, and then they were born. What nature of a unity, what nature of independence could be spoke or fathomed by individuals A through Z. If it was formally allowed, it would have been like that everywhere at once. But there's natures of organized crimes that are distinct tactically because they are tactically non-distinctly used at all locations /s by the hyperforeign. There has been this identity of sophistication for everyone since before the church used confessions. This breaching method, the proverbial devil, a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise. It forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded people to blame other things, others, or ourselves, for what nature was and is demonstrating to us. To blame on the human fact, human nature breaching method. That is one of the things all those multi-front assaults on human rights were about. You guys are making things, pretend things are debatable because you have mass at countries A through Z. Styles of logic, natures of logic that already had. The breaching method showing them they need to hide about how they use descriptions of themselves as truth tellers and or as liars. And the difference of that was it used by it too, or of others. There's a mass identity theft, fraud, slander method. And it's reliant upon them using pretended research. See, research locations and the uses of stuff in databases is being used to sense that entertained, only capable of being entertained by individual leaders, only allowed to have locations, areas, and states, criminally foreign influence, factor, nature, styles, needs, and natures, manifest by nature, pretended other to them, enforcing leaders' collusion /us with that. Names A through Z have been used through systems and as systems tactical ulterior, from the one that shows us to speak about individual relative to why and to how. Each species body is an individual body made up of a whole bunch of individuals. And with these group differences, like two eyes, like needing food, water, like two sexes, and other group differences. For example, because two eyes and two sexes, and how water and gases have a relationship to the identity of value /value progression. That is not any of the other anything we can discern. It is not ourselves. But while it is all things are anyway in ourselves, Chibo, we could ignore the system and invent hyperditionally different ones. In other words, one's abridged, but it demonstrates nature itself before the Constitution was founded. It demonstrates the value of the Constitution unabridged. It demonstrates the value of that word, let alone nature itself shows us to discern it as abridgment /s / hyper abridgment /s. And see, but the /s is the standing nature, a third hyper invisible, but still discernible part. There are proofs that the ancients, I am not a lawyer, lawyers, I recorded them too since founding, incapable of handling any subject treatment, any value treatment properly. The names of the people of the sciences. See, the beginning of the Old Testament, for example, it has a part that says, only defend right here where the names of the people of the sciences will come together, and the part that comes before it. But people don't know that. So the mass groups of people, everyone, they pretend, well, this is what we all agree, and they poll people on it. See, the names of the people of the sciences, they're different. The names of the people of the religions, the difference of it. The preaching method interpreted what our founders left us to interpret before we did. It had since before religious messengers had been. It had from off the campuses A through Z and the exceptions. Forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded. The syntax obligated by nature for the names of the people of the sciences to be abridged from that quality of that aspect, that nature of fact-achieving nature, capable of defending itself simultaneously with short words, even with convictions proper regarding the relativity of the breaching method, simultaneously now with nature's, because the breaching method has a hyper invisible but still discernible identity of relativity to ourselves, as shown to us by nature. Because where we can discern nature's complete identity to an extent, it comes with its complete complete identity relationship to itself, and only an increasing value of that as three inseparably distinctly appreciated by nature's complete identity values of the same value progression, simultaneously instantly increasing their own value distinctly, but by increasing the others simultaneously equally as the same body and C cell nucleus, cell body, cell wall / S. And how it comes with nature's demonstration / S, being hyper invisible but still discernible distinctly from how it is itself also the invisible but still discernible. In English, in the parts of speech of English grammar was revealed to be taught this way. But it was revealed when other languages were also revealed to be taught this way. We could use, for example, the predicate is value to the law as a means to discern criminal insidiousness nature / hyper criminal insidiousness nature. For example, there was the hyper foreign that had slavery rules, distinctly northern colonies and southern colonies, through distinct companies, distinct countries too, more than one, and collusions with that. And all of them, the voicings of humanity, individually grouped together. It was all systems tactile from the one that nature uses black people's whites of eyes to communicate with us. Uses how there are only two eyes, how there are exceptions, why what exception nature. We have exception nature through fake abridged systems, incapable of affording it to be discerned. And so incapable of making legal subject treatments proper, like with artificial intelligence, and needing to pretend others simultaneously. In other words. So the FBI has an upskirt picture on Twitter, and it looks like one of the girls that's further involved with the Phil Collusion and unnamed people involved, like shortly one after another, like a day or so apart, was swerving a bike near my house. The only time I ever saw Phil Collusion on my street. He has roles with a bunch of people with whiting forensics and with Wethersfield police that faced conversations that ties to me as a kid and then as an adult. And the kids who did go down there and speak with them, they used that to make it look like I spoke with them before that, just by putting me in a car. Increasingly, Ray Collusion has collusion / S with foreign and domestic intelligence families, interbranch families too. Judges, prosecutors, all sides of criminal and civil cases, that has roles with the interbranch at the same time and foreign at the same time, collusions with them and people at the campuses. Trinity College has a Joshua Stryker, who is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. I never had a word of conversation with Joshua Stryker in my life. He's increasingly collusions with people with shipping locations and associated with Hartford Hospital people and families involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and putting fake things at campuses, intercities and intra-cities, and with some black KKK, Confederate black team, Latino team, and Italian team, inter and intra-cultural and religious spots, all-time collusion / S, and then they build upon it years later, relative to where and how a breaching method shows the three branches of the government. They need to hide how they used. They were collusion / S. with the breaching methods uses of them, as it knew that nature would demonstrate this to us. Overt criminal enterprises, however, or private ones, terrorists at the same time, they were kept needing to hide. The same self-value sequence shifts, criminal insidiousness natures of a Boolean logic, natures of logic, but not relative to the invisible but still discernible alone, to discern this right, and not leaving out the breaching method. We can only afford to have guilt and blame brought up if we're going to trace things relative to the breaching method. And everyone rolls blaming and having blamed other things, others, ourselves, right where our founders communicated for us to blame it on a breaching method too, like slavery. Our founders communicated for us to understand why and how, only to refer to James Madison as our founder, because he's the one who detailed about even when he was president, he still didn't have free speech. There was still a breaching method entrenched, and it was a breaching method, but it already had roles, and already had everyone as a standing fact-treatment nature of criminal and seditious natures of positive treatments and negative treatments, forced to blame on other things, others, ourselves, as sense and sensibilities know, to use Jane Austen's phrase. Before we even come to Jane Austen, we're going to have to understand criminal insidiousness nature properly. And nature, I'm not even a lawyer, nature shows us we're going to have to understand / hypercriminal insidiousness nature. This breaching method needs the names of countries A through Z at the locations, areas, and states of those countries, people that are invested, forcing, tricking, hurting, persuading other things, others, ourselves, to be blamed until it's right more and more. But even when it's right more and more, right there, it was his syntax, nature, and styles of logic as collusion /S, propagated demonstrably since they were kids. You guys are just met. There are a whole bunch of reasons they have to put fake lies at the same scale that a list of reasons that a breaching method knew that they would have before any identity of suit and tie, counter, or exception ever had the audacity to pretend that we can't discern, or they themselves can't discern, and that are sensing for them in themselves. You know, anyone starting to react, remember, these are not voices that spoke for the human species body of individual bodies. We are distinct from other species bodies, but non-distinct from them, and we are simultaneous with them, but per a further distinct identity of simultaneous nature per science. Also, per anyone who would debate this stuff would bring proofs /S of the same thing and more. Just like anyone trying to debate, they say, "Oh, of course, Thomas Jefferson was our founder," or "Of course, George Washington was our founder." That nature of debate that is reliant too upon people not even offensively preventing anyone from being honest about the extortion of George Washington, which would have brought up how all the founders had to counter extort the other founders. Why they had to even leave slavery entrenched, even laws against all women, against all Native American, even roles with all natures of hurting, of helping, and of trying to counter and trying to overcome all the hurt and all the negative value nature, progression natures, also time collusion /S only permitted with the positive treatments, negatives, criminal and seditious natures of positive and negative to keep the identity of relativity to ourselves of the breaching method. Every identity of relativity has relativity to positive. Every identity has relativity to positive and to negative simultaneously, to an extent, where more and more what is positive to an as nature system unabridged, as its own body, as every body. And here, where Earth has a special difference, where it can demonstrate to consciousness. But we are forced to entertain the aims of the people of the sciences, including of the law. Criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, raw. Incapable of affording to have anyone tell on the breaching method, even about World Trade Center predicate acts and remote uses of administrations I recorded. Please get me off the fake conversations with CBS. Please, CBS, do what's right. Don't make it worse. Because I have to keep going into you and your neighbors and other people further have roles with victims advocates, with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and with the other countries you guys brought in, with various natures of organized crimes, fake ties, fake natures of ties to little kids. And to me, when I was a little kid, and I was an adult too. Increasingly, it's people from Central Connecticut State University involved intercities and intra-cities, and with the campuses, hyper additionally collusion /S. We're going to have to get it right this time and not leave out the breaching methods, which is only discernible through its use of location /S. But it's manifest that way. Inside all that has transpired, Black people's peer who disbelieves,